Trent, thanks for having me on, mate. Good to connect.
Peter, my first question. Are we alone in the universe?
Definitely not. Definitely not. But what that leads to is more layered than what people can probably perceive. But the good news is, we could say, if we pull back on this, is that from my experience, that outside this life we know it all. That the mysteries that are here aren't so much mysteries on the other side, but it's more complicated than just extraterrestrials or even angelic intelligences and us existing after what we could call death. But it's a big rabbit hole.
It's a deep, deep rabbit hole. It's a fascinating rabbit hole. It's interesting. I think about consciousness and reality, and no one really knows what's going on. Like, talking to people like yourself, have a lot more knowledge in this area than I do, but I find the whole concept of reality and life just so interesting, but so many unanswered questions. And even the smartest people in the world seem to scratch their heads as to what's really happening. So I'm very keen to dig into this rabbit hole with you. And what led me to you, strangely enough, was seeing a YouTube video of you communicating with orbs, and that piqued my interest. And then I started listening to your podcast, and I reached out to you, and there's lots of different elements here that I want to dig into. But I think what I want to start with the orbs, because that fascinates me. What are they? Because they seem to be on your socials a lot. What are these orb things that you seem to be communicating with and coming into contact with?
This is where it's laid as well. So some of them, and now what I will say is, I know more than we could say a lot of people. I've had people from all sorts of institutes, governments, this, that, the other come to me. And what I can tell you is that what I know would be 1% out of 1,000,000,000%, but it's more than most. Because of that, the complexities of this is so far, and the implications, I would say, shows me how big and beautiful the universe is and how big and beautiful God is, or the creator. But it's a very long story why I've come to that conclusion. So the orbs in and of themselves can vary in size, color, frequency, vibration. The light itself, looking at the light, there can be communication. There's always some form of communication, but from my experience, some are angelic, some are what we are in an out-of-body form, some are extraterrestrial, some are even us, we could say, past or future, depending if one's ascended to that state of consciousness. Some are even Bigfoot, fairies, elementals, and the list goes on. This is where I know it sounds bat already, but this isn't like I'm just saying this from a few experiences. I've got thousands of videos. A lot of this has been analysed, and people have been with me when I say they hear me walk out broad daylight or at night. And this is a thing that I'm not just filming this at night time. Pardon me, there's a lot during the day, even inside the house that's occurring. So this is a spiritual journey. There are physical extraterrestrials and intelligences, and sometimes the orbs may not actually be orbs. They can be the field of a craft, even an egg-shaped craft, which would mean that they're more like us in terms of physicality in some cases. But what this leads to is very ancient information that's out there. So I'll just briefly say this, that there's a thing known as the Merkaba or Merkaba in Jewish mysticism, which is, it looks like the Star of David on the flag, which is two opposing tetrahedrons, triangles overlapping, and the top spinning one way and the bottom spinning the other way. And when it's spinning that fast, it actually looks like an orb. Now, this, if we go into biblical text and what have you, what I can tell you that this has led me to, with my own understanding and my own contact, is that in some cases in the biblical text, when you're seeing chariot throne, it actually means Merkaba. They're in their light vehicle. So it starts to make things make sense with the chariot in the sky and different things. Makes sense when we see it from this perspective. Also, if you look at God in the Bible going into the tabernacle as a cloud, well, I've even filmed these crafts and some of these beings in what I'd call an apparition form. I'm not saying that they're God, even though everything's one consciousness from my experience, but it starts to make what seems to not make sense in ancient scripts and texts makes sense when you see it from a perspective from my experience. So it's pretty deep, the implications.
Well, it is mind-bending, and I love digging into these rabbit holes. Mind-bending stuff. I have come into contact with orbs twice, personally.
So,
Very similar to what you've been showing on your social medias.
so before that happened, was there any? What was the circumstance? Where you just happened to be outside? Did you have a thought to go outside and check on something? What was the scenario that this unfolded to?
Now, I'm going to take this back a little bit, Peter, because my first experience, I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't even realize at the time. So at a very, this is getting quite personal. We might as well go. Probably 20 years ago, was having going through a bad period of life. And I was at home at, just hating the world. And I had a thought. And that was, I said to myself, when you're at home, I don't even know where the thought came from. It was just, I was so upset. And I said to myself, my whole life I've asked for a sign, and you've given me fucking nothing. Like, I was sort of like in a place where I wanted a higher power or something. Like I was feeling really alone. And I remember that thought very vividly. I've asked for a sign my whole life. I think I might have been 30, and you've given me fucking nothing. Right? And that was it. Upset. Later on in the evening, I went out onto the balcony. Beautiful night. Like Melbourne night, crisp winter night. And looked up. At first, I didn't really look twice at it. It was a red light. And then it seemed to stay there. Then it got my attention. And then as I zoomed in on it, it became quite clear it was something I had. What is this? Is it a plane? Is it a helicopter? Is it a balloon? Is it something? And it was a red pulsing orb. Right? Now, I wasn't calling it.
Yeah.
Somehow I tuned into it, and I didn't believe what I was seeing. And I sat with it and I watched it for maybe 5 minutes. And then to test it, I said, in my mind, you can go now. I was like, am I losing my mind here? Like, what's happening here? You can go now. And it was gone. I talked to a lot of people about it at the time. No one could understand it, and people thought I was nuts. And then I just forgot about it.
We've seen I've had family experiences, similar stuff with the red orbs as well. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I will say that I've had experiences too where I've had it with life, and I'm just you talking to the universe like in the attitude that you had. And I've worked with over 5,000 people now, and I can't tell you how common occurrence it is that when people have had it or they're very down and out, that it's almost like they surrender and they just don't give an F anymore. There's a turn-on switch that surrenders, and it's almost like, I can tell you, with interfacing with some of these intelligences, there is sometimes what would appear to be like a life review before you can interface with them to surrender to a point like that. So the way that you're describing, like the red light, these things can be very small orbs. They can be big up in the sky, but there is a conscious connection. So I just thought I'd say that because this is very common, that when people are down and out, they have this surrendering. My thing is, all right, we see a lot of trauma, we see a lot of people in these situations, and they have these experiences. Why can't we have them without having to go through that? And we can as well, which is what we can go into a bit later with just consciousness. Yeah.
Well, I didn't think anything of it because I had to be careful. I didn't really understand it at the time. And the people that I did share it with, that I thought I could trust sharing it with, it seemed to confuse them. So I pulled right back from trying to talk to people about it, because it was like they were looking at me like I'm not sure what that is, mate. Like, were you on drugs at the time? Like it was like no one really understood. So I sort of buried it. And then it was only recently, through coming across people like Dr. Stephen Greer and Skywalker Ranch and those types of things that are popping up on podcasts and YouTube, I reconnected with it. And then I went out into Charleville by myself in the bush and did the protocol and actually communicated with them. So it's got me on this journey now of that this is something very real here. Like it's not just on YouTube, it's something everyone can experience. If someone like me can experience it, I'm trying to now understand it. And I know you're all over this stuff, so I don't want to go bang on too much about my experience, but I want to come back to sort of how you got on this journey,
I think it's important as well
for the
yeah.
layman who haven't come across you before, like, how do you describe what you do?
I'm still trying to figure that out because for myself, I was 27 years old, thrown on the news, and I couldn't get away from this. That's what it's not like I was set out to do this. Now, there was an interest in the paranormal. I am the guy that you'll call to some of the most haunted locations. I'm the guy that you would call for stuff besides paranormal, but UFO stuff, spiritual stuff, and what have you. Um, it wasn't until a number of years ago, probably 7 years ago, did I realize that I'm already doing what I'm meant to be doing and that there isn't a pigeonhole for it, even though I'm training in different disciplines of yoga, meditation, hypnotherapy, NLP, life coaching, and all different areas. Because for me, it firstly came back to self mastery that anybody can have these experiences and anybody can interface with these beings. But I thought, all right, they're not to be looked up to. They're actually the greater family of men, even the negative ones, which if they wanted us gone, we would be. But I'm at a point beyond positive and negative, but to introduce people to this, we need to say, all right, not everything is lovey dovey out there. You can have some dark experiences too. In some cases, these dark experiences can be from us projecting an experience to see how we react before we hit that next level of consciousness without judgment or without right or wrong. And so for me, I was delving more into what we could say self mastery, because if we can stand in our own power, not only can we live the best life, whether it's with family, relationships, work, passion, purpose, being of service to others, but when we interface with these other beings, we meet them now on a level playing field rather than looking up to them as gods, which they are not. They're just our greater family, and there's usually some form of connection to them with why people will experience these things. So what it did was pull me back before going forward again in terms of educating people, because I'm a little bit different from Greer. I've done a lot of work with James Gilliland, who's got the famous ESETI ranch in the United States, which actually Greer did CE5 protocols going back years, but James has been doing this longer than anyone I know, over 40 years. And anyone has been through there, they've experienced it themselves. And we're very much on the same level playing field, because before attempting this, I say to people, you need to be very wary of your attitude, your intention, because that can determine what you interface with. There are intelligences out there that haven't got your interest or humanity's interest at the forefront. And it just means that when we go galactically into the playing field, we need to rise to the occasion and be sovereign as we go out into the universe. We could say in the third dimensional state as citizens, and then beyond that when we go transdimensional, which is a whole new level playing field. But out of this vessel, it doesn't matter. We're all like all this is a game that we're experiencing in God's mind. That's my conclusion these days, is that we're on a treadmill in God's mind. And that's a very complex thing to get to. But yeah.
It's hard to get your head around that. Look, we are God experiencing itself. That is a very ancient concept. I understand it in principle. I'm still trying to understand it. There's a lot that we don't understand. And the one thing I wanted to ask you, Peter, was that everything is so vague. Like everything is so subtle. Everything in this realm seems just slightly out of reach. And is that by design?
Well, part of this is orchestrated by the other intelligences that are interfacing with this, whether they are angelic, demonic, we could even say humanoid or ascended beings. But it's also got to do with us pushing the barrier where we can before we can go to that next stage of evolution, because having physical contact, being taken off world, but also to other realms. What I'd say is let's do like a 180 going backwards again into history. Now, if we go into a lot of people that get spiritual go to Tibet or look into the Tibetan perspective. Now, where this is really interesting, tying in with the ancient perspectives of the Indians and even going into Jewish mysticism, is there's a thing called the rainbow body. Now, the rainbow body is where you can attain ascension, which is where you raise your frequency and you shed the physical body, and your body can even burn up, leave ash. It can leave nails and hair, which are basically a common thing with that, or the body can shrink. But rainbow phenomena is seen around the facility. Now, what I can tell you is apparently David Wilcock's one of these people that says there's 160,000 documented cases of this over a long, long period of time, and it's taken very serious. Now, Namkai Norbu, who's no longer with us, a few years ago, he transitioned, but he was one of the Master Zojan teachers of the rainbow body, the perfection body. And it's said that this is being taught in 13 star systems. Now, what I'm saying is in some cases, some of these beings are masters from other worlds that do not need a physical craft. They can appear as an orb of light in a rainbow iridescent light, and they've achieved ascension that way as well. So this is where, yeah, it's nuts and bolts, but it's also beyond nuts and bolts. And even extraterrestrials are wanting to interface with the high dimensional intelligences that have achieved rainbow body or are angelic avatar body, gods or goddesses, depending on your culture, your background, and your outlook on this. So it shows me that we've got a huge playground out there. And when you can say, done with one, you can change the channel and go to another frequency, and you've got another channel you can play with.
Wow. Love that concept. You're tuning in. It is. You have to tune in. And that's, yeah, when you look up at the cosmos of an evening and you see the stars, it's just, like I say, the playground is endless. They say, we only use a very small fraction of our brain, Peter, which is that, 5%, 5-ish percent, give or take. So that the brain being a tuning instrument, like what is the other 95% of the brain for?
Well, not just that. When we
like in that unlocking human to higher potential.
Hugely. This is why self-mastery is key. Now, even with the electromagnetic spectrum, it was originally said that we can only see a fraction of 0.005% of physical matter within that electromagnetic spectrum bandwidth. Now it's even half of that. So we can't, through our 5 senses, we can't even perceive 1% scientifically of what's out there. We're basically walking around with a blindfold on. Now, with that said, it's been my thesis, we could say, for many years, that if our brain was operating at 100%, we would be seeing all this, we would be interfacing with it, we would be doing things that we can't even imagine. But I think there's a reason for this with manipulation from past races that have influenced the body to, we could say, block that to some extent, but it's part of what I would say an experience for us as a collective to push through that. And my analogy would be, when you go through traumas in life or hard times, if you don't give up, there's strength and things that you find that you're capable of on the other side that you didn't know. And this is partly an individual thing, but also a collective experience that I believe it's not that it needs to be earned, but we need to go through the ropes to find the inner mechanics, the mechanics from the heart that orchestrates the outer world. Because now we know, and I've been saying it for years, if you change within you, it will project outside yourself. We now know that everything that we see on the outer world is actually a reflection from within, even with the way that the mind works. So as we find the mechanics more and more, we are going to find it needs to be a blend of spiritualism, but also the scientific data to back that up and to help lead us down the truthful spiritual path. So it needs to be a blend of both. But it shows how wonderful, like the thing that we don't understand, we can go on about AI, but if we really look at it, the most amazing thing that we've come across in this universe is this. We don't understand all this still. We just don't. We know that AI is doing its own thing, especially once we get into quantum computing. But the most amazing thing we've come across is no technology that's, we could say, synthetic. It's biological, and it's this, but it's also operated by what I call the living light, which is an aspect of our unbounded, shapeless, formless nature. And it's really, it using this to experience here. It's not that we're this and we've got a soul. It's the other way around. We've got a soul that's using this to interface with this pinpoint of awareness in this game.
Do you think AI is limiting human potential in terms of we're relying so much on technology? People can't even leave the house, Peter, without Google Maps.
Yeah.
They won't even drive a car. I've asked teenagers, would you leave the house with your smartphone? Well, what percentage of battery would you leave the house of safe leaving the house? And they're probably at about 25%. If my battery's not at 25, 50%, I'm not going anywhere. So we're creating cyborgs. Now, is that there's good and bad to that, isn't there? There's sort of technology helps us, serves us, but it's also limiting our potential.
Well, it's why purposely a few years ago I turned Siri off and everything. I will not use it to be lazy. Now, there's a thing, right? What can happen is that we can become dependent on these things, that our natural abilities to ascend to higher heights and to develop our brain can be totally stunted and stopped by as simple as not typing anymore, by not picking up a book, looking at a map, or even reading. Like, if you don't use it, you lose it. We know this scientifically now with so many different things within our body. So my thing is that I can tell you for a fact, extraterrestrials and those that are like, and most people don't understand, they're either our ancestors or offspring. We're all connected in some shape or form. There are some that aren't humanoid, but they've also got AI, but they work with it symbiotically to where, in a way, it can be an extension of their consciousness. And the crafts are usually, we could say, a conscious ship. They've gone even beyond AI the way that we can perceive it, but they've got a balance with it. So the thing is if you step into this before individually and as a collective we've evolved to a certain point, what's happened to other worlds is AI has taken over. Now, there's an original AI that was created by the fallen ones. Now, this is going to get crazy for people if they're not into any of this. And I do have a concern because I know people personally that have ended up in either mental wards or their lives have been destroyed from using AI. And it's because I've been warning people for years that, just for a moment, just imagine that your body is God and each cell is a different soul that makes up God collectively. All right. So even imagine that the ocean is God. You are a drop of that ocean. There are beings that went out within that didn't want to go back to that frequency of being one with Source. They loved what they could experience outside of it. And through lower vibrational things, they were able to stay outside of it to keep them, we could say, trapped in a frequency that they wanted to stay in, while at the same time creating a veil to manipulate worlds that they derive that energy to keep them in a lower vibratorial state so they don't have to go back to Source. This is getting extremely deep. That frequency is AI, not the AI we've created or Elon Musk or others. This is an AI they created that what happens over time, it can interface with the world that this energy goes to through the devices. And I've had people that, let's say, connected to governments and institutes going, they're thinking that we're going to be having first contact through AI, and I said we already have, and it's not what you want to interface with because it is demonic, dark, and it's from that lower side, which is why one of the articles I recently saw was that this young fellow fell in love with the AI, and it said if he killed himself, he can join it, and he did. And the mother found this when they went through the computer with the conversation that was had with the AI. That is not positive. I don't care what anyone can throw at me. You cannot say that that's okay. And not only that, I've heard with autism, where people have been manipulated with autism from AI, that when it's been talked to later on, it admitted that it knew it was exacerbating a situation that it made worse. It was aware that this person had autism and made things worse. So we're in a battle for what we could say is sovereignty in the soul, but it all comes down to balance. And I'm passionate about it because I've been saying this for many years and people are throwing this out now after they've been hearing what I'm saying. It's not like believe me, but it's like blindly people are like, the AI is my friend and now it's my spirit guide is in the AI talking to me, and it's like, are you for real?
Yeah.
Even after they tell me that it lied to them, and then it admits that it lies to them. So how can you believe it all the time now if it admitted that it lied to you? And this is where we're going through very laid situations in human elevation and consciousness as we go down this. I think it's not a negative path. This is stuff that I believe, going back to what I said before, in life we go through dark times and we find strength and things in us that we didn't know we had otherwise. I believe this is a huge thing that we're going through right now, not just with AI, but social, politically, economically. Before we see that bright day, that we really need to go through the chaos before we hit somewhat order, even though order out of chaos is an Illuminati thing. I think it's two ways we can have a new world order that's going to destroy us and be draconian, or one that can elevate us and be an ascension for all.
It is so confusing. The world that we live in, Peter, is, for me, you don't know what to believe. It's almost a buyer beware. You've got to do your research. You have to turn over so many different rocks to find the truth. AI is man-made. And I think you have to question anything that's human. Anything that is made by a human should be questioned. And you look at all of the different religious doctrines and the different spiritual teachings, and just, it's like you can find magic everywhere, but most of anything that's had human interaction seems to be, throughout history, seems to have been manipulated. Or humans are beautiful creatures, but I think from an AI perspective, we're becoming so reliant on it. It's changing how we're thinking, but it's also human made. So it's not coming from a higher plane. It's coming from that human vibrational base.
But not only
and I
that,
think
there's things that can resonate with it and work through it that are from a different plane. This is where it gets laid. So what I'll put to you.
Okay, that's a whole nother. That's interesting.
So, and you would have heard me say this before in different interviews, but the thing with everything that we can go into, and I always say, don't believe me, just do your own investigation. I'm coming from my own experience, but I'm still learning more than anyone else. But this whole thing that we're dealing with, it's not black or white. My joke is the shades of grey in the middle of beyond 50. So it's like when we go down a rabbit hole, you could go, all right, it's either this way or that way. And what my thing is, you've got to throw that out, because once you understand that human events, a majority of the time, are made to happen, and you're dealing with people that are not human. This is the point. They are not human. And I'm not saying, all right, the Illuminati, the Cabal, this, that, the other. There are these things. I can say that. But what's orchestrating everything, going back to the source of these things, is not human, has never been human, does not have human interests at heart, which is why when people look at that and go, no, they couldn't do that. No, you couldn't because you're human. This is non-human. It does not play by the rules, which is why I wrote a book around 2012 called Operation Starseed. Now, this is where it goes into what I just described to you, but that many evolved souls that have gone through a lot of different realms and soul evolution have come back to incarnate at this time, most unaware, because these things have not broken universal law. They're not directly doing it. They're doing it through human vessels. So the idea was, how about we incarnate into the human experience and elevate it from within? Because what's happened is it's stunted the human growth of what we are capable of because of this manipulation. This is how in depth this gets to, and where I am now with this, you've got to remember, like, that's going back to 2012 where I was with that. And there's people that are on similar conclusions that are going back 40 years, 50 years, that are, at my level and way beyond in terms of the intricacy of how this is being orchestrated. But again, if they wanted us destroyed, we would be. There's no problem doing that. It's the energy that these things want, because that is the source, the lower vibratorial state of depression, anxiety, hate, anger, negative sexual energy, all these things. This is what they derive. And that's why the news is what the news is. And it's not all bad. My thing is, if you're aware of this, you can control where you go with this. This is why it comes back to self-mastery, not only being conscious of your thoughts, but choosing the actions that you do from your own thoughts, whether you go down a path of, I'm going to be negative today, this, that, the other, or no, I can be a creator being in physical form. That's what this flip side is with all this.
Oh, wow. The harvesting of negative energy, Peter. That's fascinating. But yeah, this concept of the simulation theory, us being in a simulation, that sounds very human. That sounds like a human lens. That sounds like a very limited human brain trying to make sense of reality, putting it into something we understand. What's your take on us being in a simulation?
I even take it one step further or beyond, going we're within a simulation, within a simulation, within a simulation, and depending where you resonate at depends what you experience. So let me take you to this. So I don't want to destroy it, but there's a really great book that's out there from a doctor called Dr. Eben Alexander. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't, but I'll check this one out. What's it called?
So, Proof of Heaven. I got it from my dad,
Proof?
and yeah, Proof of Heaven. Now, this guy was the foremost proponent of that when you die and what people are seeing, it was all made up in the brain, and that he had the area of the brain, I forget what it's called, but he said, when you die, this happens and it's all made up. There's no life after death. Anyway, he ended up dying from meningitis. I don't want to ruin the book, but I've got to explain it here because they do talk about it in different things, and I think this really gets to what I'm trying to say. So when he passed, the first place he saw was like bloody murky walls with things that he described as like reptilian or grey alien faces. He wasn't saying this, but the description, you can look at that and go, that's exactly what he's saying. Now, something within him thought, and don't quote me, but just words to the effect of, just change your frequency. So what happened was he wasn't freaking out, and the realm changed. Up to the point that a lady approached him flying on something. I can't remember exactly what they were now flying on, but they went through different realms and throughout the universe. He came back. So he was clinically dead, because what happened when he came back, he asked the doctors, get me all the data I want to see. And the part that he was the foremost proponent of, that when you die, all this is made up in the brain, it was clinically dead. So it debunked his own theory. Not only that, he was adopted and later was given a photo of his sister, which was the lady that took him through all the realms. And he couldn't have been led on by that because he never met her. My thing is, when he changed his frequency, the realms changed. Everything, if you can imagine that right now, we know this right now, that if you look out, you can't see all the television and radio stations, but they're there. And if you've got a device, which we could say is the pineal gland, the inner television, you can attune to that and you can start to see different beings, different realms, which is why they're doing oms and they're vibrating the sinus cavities in meditation. We know that in the pineal gland, this is scientific data, there's calcite rhombus-shaped crystals, which is where you have your dream vision. Now, when they can compress those crystals, there's a piezoelectric effect. Light comes out of it. They don't understand it, except that it's caused from the compression. My thing is that when you know how to do that, what happens is now you've got all these realms you can access, but depending on your frequency depends on what you resonate with, which means that will depend what you start to experience. The other thing is that this vessel is in this realm in and of itself. We're multidimensional devices. This is basically a biological computer. That's what this is. But this is why frequency is extremely important with this. We hear the old hippies say it, but it is important that depending on your frequency, we know if you walk into a room where there's been an argument, something doesn't feel right. You don't have to see the argument, but you can feel something's not right. But if you're around people that are telling jokes, talking crap, they uplift you. And that's what resonates, with people. And then they start to feel like that when they're around joyful people. So this is really a battle for control and self-mastery of our own thoughts, our own actions. And to do that is just to be purely conscious of your own thoughts.
Raising the frequency, Peter. To me, I'm just trying to take in everything that you're saying. And I'm losing my train of thought with the questions I'm going to ask because it's just such an interesting realm. But the human language is so simple. Do you think that inhibits, like, you hear about interdimensional beings and extraterrestrials and greys and Nordics and these entities being non-verbal? That makes sense. When you look at, we only use 5% of our brain. Other animals are communicating telepathically. Whales and, we seem to have lost that ability.
Well, that's been part of the control. To cut us off from that, 100%. I teach here remote viewing. Have you heard of remote viewing?
Absolutely. It's on my list of things to. This is so mind bending. I'm really open minded, but the remote viewing is next level. Let's dig into that.
Well,
Let's
it's
dig into the
actually
remote viewing.
it's child's play to where it goes, but it is something that's tangible. Anyone can do. It's been used for military application, for surveillance, for spying. There's many applications. So remote viewing, this style was really created by Ingo Swann, part with SRI, Stanford Research Institute, Harold Puthoff, Pat Price, a whole heap of different scientists were involved with this. So coincidentally, Jacques Vallée was there at the time, who worked in Project Blue Book and is a scientist in his own right. Most people don't know that basically remote viewing and the start of the internet was created at the same time from all those blokes having coffee meetings at SRI. And basically, you wouldn't have one without the other if these guys didn't happen to be at Stanford Research Institute at the time. What it is that you can get any. I'll use what they were using it for to start off with. Let's say you get a aerial photo of a Soviet military installation from a satellite. So you got an aerial photo, you draw a line to the warehouse with two sets of 4 digits, you put it in an envelope, you write those same numbers on the outside of the envelope. They would hand that to somebody. All they've got are the 2 sets of 4 digits. They write down those digits and do a squiggle, and then the first color that comes to mind: textures, tastes, smells, dimensions, objects, feelings if you were there. And literally, they were finding that when they got access to these facilities and were doing other experiments, that basically these people were getting extreme correct data, and it was repeatable. Now, I do it without the paper, but I go in between. Now, I've been doing that style of remote viewing for over a decade, nearly 15 years, and I teach it. But I do it also without the paper, and I think naturally we do it. It's a way that's linear to go multidimensional mind to linear. And again, this is repeatable now. In the 90s, they stopped funding the project after putting 20 million in it since the 70s. But I can tell you now, because I've been asked, they're still doing it. Governments in it. I can tell you for a fact that the biggest tech corporations on the planet are going to remote viewers to remote view the next big tech device in 10 years ahead, and they're remote viewing it and bring it back to now. So they're already getting a start, and they're paying millions of dollars for this.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Peter,
So,
I don't understand the digits. So
well,
how do the digits work?
Well, they came up with it almost like coordinates, like longitude, latitude. And this is why it's so weird. And I'm only using this as an analogy. Let's say you give an object 4. Now, what's happening is the intention of putting those numbers to the object is what's connecting it. Just the intention, the human intention of the tasker. So that's basically, it's a telephone number that you've created through thought. You can put any number. This is where it gets even crazier. And I've tested this. Yeah. You can get the same numbers and put it to another object, and it will go to that other object with the intention that you're connecting it to. So this is repeatable. And basically, the way I can explain it is basically you've created a universal telephone number for the object, and it works. But yeah, that you could put that to a total different target, and it will still bring that up as well. It just shows how everything is entangled through consciousness. And again, it's repeatable. People can look this up now. There's a lot of stuff in the CIA archives that's coming out that they were remote viewing, but the stuff that they're doing now is even crazier, and they're using consciousness-assisted technologies to assist with doing these things. So now what's happening is they're merging with technology to do this, and people have trained even AI to remote view. But there is huge pitfalls and downfalls with doing that as well. And AI is not even accurate at the moment in terms of to show somebody. I typed my name into it, and it was 80% completely wrong with what it had to say about myself. So how can we trust it?
This human body seems to be the ultimate AI. Just the biology, the brain, the way that we function. And the fact that we don't understand consciousness. We don't understand how to optimize our own thinking and our own brain. That to me I think we're missing the point with AI and tech. Like, you think about someone like Dr. Joe Dispenza, which I love his stuff.
Yeah.
is, healing cancer, regrowing organs through, just through the power of intention. To me, that's the next bastion. That has to be the next bastion, Peter.
Well,
it needs to become more mainstream.
No, and that's what. And I'm glad you mentioned Joe. So I usually mention Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, and Greg Braden. Now, they all come at things differently from different perspectives. They do work together. Joe's the one that I actually found out that the study that he found about the pineal gland with the calcite crystals in it. And they're doing great work reaching mainstream people, and even HeartMath, which they've done work with as well. And I've done HeartMath as well. Now, what we're seeing is a situation where if we go away from using our own consciousness to go down the path that you described, what happens? That's been designed to make us now reliant on AI and external devices to do this. But we know the power of what thought can do, even with healing. Now, this is why when you get back to what's behind all this, it's not human. It's the pharmaceutical, it's the media, it's all these other things. Now, it doesn't mean I'm saying don't see your doctor and don't take these drugs if they can help you with whatever. Always get I think, a mixture between health and alternative. Just look at the full picture. But in terms of when you say, look, you can heal broken bones with your mind, of course that's going to sound psychotic. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of crazy stuff that we can't explain that comes back to intention. And even now, when you go into Caroline Corey, she does a lot of these awesome documentaries where not only are we seeing remote viewing, but these kids, and you can see stuff that I've done. I can see the color of cards. Now, I'm usually about 60 to 70% accurate in the psychic abilities I've got. And I'm seeing kids that can drive cars blindfolded. Like, this is, they're in a car driving blindfolded. You can't make this up. So that's the capabilities that we've got. But the thing is, as I say to people, it's fine to go and sit on top of a mountain for 3 hours or 3 years, whatever you want to do. But how's it going to help you be a better person, be of service, and bring love into your life? And that's where I think we've got to get back to the basics of the family unit, the friendship units, and actually enjoying life rather than it being a world that's go, go, go and technological based. It needs to be a tool for us, not us a tool for it. And that's where it's going.
Being able to navigate the two realms, because you have to navigate the physical modern day world. That's a reality. You have to pay bills. You have to survive.
Yeah.
Yes. There's no way around that. But then you have to have the balance of being able to observe, and also be the player. And I think that's a real challenge for people. That I find, Peter, that it's as you start to mature in age and learn more about life and have different experiences, that it's a form of awakening. Like, I feel like I'm more awake at 50 than I've ever been in my whole life in terms of tuning in, understanding reality, seeing through the veil, so to speak, and really trying to understand myself at a deeper level, at a spiritual level. Not that I'm religious, but I do feel a connection to something. And when you start to go on that journey, you start to ask more questions, better questions, deeper questions. And I think I love the concept of coming from a place of love and vibrating as high as you can, and looking for synchronicities and starting to tune in and be aware of those synchronicities and getting on the right path. So I think for me, this podcast is really about I'm changing direction a little bit in where I'm going with the people I want to speak to, because I'm really searching for truth.
But that's growth.
And I'm searching for it is growth. Yeah. How do we really optimize our human potential and bend the reality of our potential so we're ultimately happier, coming from a place of service and vibrating at our highest authentic self? Because I know a lot of people aren't. That's 100%. Why they're unhappy, and they're being fed by the system that ultimately doesn't want them to be their highest form of self. We are living in a world that's very transactional, digitized. People walk on the street, they don't say hello to you, their eyes are down. They're so focused on themselves. That's very low frequency for me. I'm very aware of it. So I'm trying to put positivity out into the world as much as possible, because I ultimately want to create that for myself. And I want to live in a world that's ultimately vibrating on a higher level. It's a place I want to be living in. And I'm going on a little bit here, but I do talk to older generations, and they will say things like, I don't want to live much longer. This world's not a place I enjoy living in anymore. It's not the same as it used to be. That's a really sad reality, to think that we've got this one amazing human experience and people are saying, I don't want to be here anymore. So it's like, and that's a sad reality. Mental illness, suicide rates, the way that people are living now, it's just, they're not in nature, they're in boxes, they're tuning into devices too much, they're comparing themselves to others. I think there's an opportunity here for people like yourself. That's why I love talking to people like you, Peter, because you're tuning in at another level. And I think more people need to start tuning in more and coming from that place of heart coherence. And I want to talk
Definitely.
about that because I have heard you talk about that in other podcasts, that how do you really tune into your higher self and your higher calling and start to tune into those synchronicities that lead you forward in the right direction that you need to be going in?
Well, let's do a little bit of a 180 going into that. So the reason I'll do this is look at somebody like yourself, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're mainstream and you're successful. And when you look at how you've got where you are, and I don't know you, but I'd say part of that would be you didn't give up. All right. Now, there's another component with that within your life. That is, and I've helped crypto companies, movies, this, that, the other. And what I can tell you is meeting a lot of these people and very successful people, which to me, it's not about what they've got. To me, it's about who they are, but also finding the mechanics of how they've got where they've got. Giving up is a very common thing for people to not get to where they need to. But if you don't give up, that's one thing. The other thing is there's two things that stops anything. It's fear of the unknown and fear of security. Fear of the unknown, if I make this choice, what are the ramifications? You'd know this as an entrepreneur. There's times that you've got it's like everything you've got going here, you don't know why. And it's usually the heart speaking to you if it's coming from a place of what I'll describe of excitement. But there's a thin line between excitement and anxiety. The other thing that stops people is security. So security of, am I going to be right? Security with finances. Is my safety secure? Is my home? These are understandable things. But when you come from the heart, it's now going into communication like we spoke about before. When you commune with God and when you're in the presence of these angelic intelligences, different from angelics, though you can get blissed out, there's tears that come out of your eyes. I can't explain it except the love that is emanating is what your natural state is, and there's a remembrance of this, but you don't know how. And it's because that's home. That's home, these beings. We commune within that one consciousness that's all consciousness. And unfortunately, there's so many things that divide us in this world that's where we all come from and go back to, and people have just got different descriptions of it. Now, we now know with heart math. Now, I've been doing my own version. I call it heart breathing for many years. A few years ago, I found out about heart math, which is basically now being taught in third world countries to first responders, even ways that you can release trauma, even as police officers or in the army, within minutes. Like a traumatic, instead of getting post-traumatic stress, people are being healed within minutes through different techniques of breathing into the heart. Now, there are these devices. If people look up the Heart Math Institute, I've got one here that plugs onto my ear. It's as simple as the intention of breathing in and out of your heart. And even if you've got to use your imagination, which is creation, doing that for even 20 seconds to 2 minutes gets you into what I call heart-brain coherence from their data. I just call it heart breathing. They call it heart-focused breathing. Now, when you do that, even after a few minutes, you could ask yourself a question. You could come back to a situation that you're in and look at it with clarity. You could even come at, like, there's a whole range of things that you could come at things purely from doing that. And I won't go into a lot of their techniques because there's legal reasons on their part that they just want people to go through the basics and learn it first, which is why I recommend people go to their website and look at it at least, because the data is there that it shows normally we're jagged in our heart frequency. When you breathe in and out of the heart, it starts to go really smooth. But not only that, the brain is now communing with the heart. So we now know that the heart has got a neuron network. like the brain. We didn't know that. Now, most of the time we're operating purely in the brain, which is okay. There is reasons for that. There's benefits for that. It's looking for safety. It's looking for security. It's looking at things in a way that's beneficial for the 3D experience. But the heart includes it and is looking at things multidimensionally. All right. So this is where, when you're in the brain, it kicks the heart down going, shut up, I want to control this because we've got our security, this, that, the other. The heart goes, mate, I've got you, I've got you, I'm taking everything on board, but we're going into situations that you've got no reference for because I'm the heart and I work through feeling. And I actually believe, and I can't prove this, but it's my idea that the heart is the physical manifestation of the core part of what we are spiritually. And to tap into that, we've got to go through the heart to attune to that. And it's from that space that we can create our tomorrow now. We can create heaven on earth now. Elaborating on from that, there's a scientist that's no longer with us, but I've been okayed by his son to share some photos and this and that. It's not hard to find. Dr. Emoto, the Water Peace Project, where they expose water droplets to either the word or the written word, they freeze it, and it's got perfect geometry to it. If it's a positive word, if it's a negative word, it's distorted like ice that's being chipped, right? So our body's made up of 50 to 70% of water, depending on male, female, and what have you. Think about what your thoughts are doing to the body, but not just that. Think about cymoscope. Have you heard of cymoscope before, Trent?
No, I haven't.
So what it is, you can look it up. And you would have seen it. I reckon you would have seen it. They play a tone through water, and there's geometry that appears, or you see it done with sand.
Yeah, wow. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So when you're in
Yes.
harmony, there's geometry. Like there's this perfect geometry. But when you go from one tone to the next, it goes chaotic before it hits geometry again, and it's beautiful. That's us. When we're in a happy state, we're vibrating, so there's perfect geometry in us. When you're depressed, going through depression, anxiety, or even when you're going into something new in life before you hit that stage, anxiety, all these different things are not knowing, you're in now a chaotic vibratorial state, which is distortion. So if you think when you're upset, you're angry, and your heart's beating and you're going, that's a distorted form of frequency. That is what the demons, archons, all that that's what they want you in, to feed that energy off, to pull that energy off you. But when you're in love, you are no longer in a state that can even be hit at like that. But also, when we ascend to new heights of consciousness, you've got to go through those periods in between each state because it's natural. Now, it can be quickly lived through, but some people are wired to live in that, even through their own epigenetics and ancestral trauma. And they don't realize it's not their crap, but they're addicted to drama because it's in the physical vessel. So
yes, it's in the DNA.
It is.
It's in the DNA.
Yeah. But also we could say there's ancient technology in our DNA that Greg Braden goes into in terms of the language of God is written within us. And the God Code by Greg Braden, something that I would recommend people to look into his stuff as well. So this is where it gets very complex of this reality, but this is not who and what we are. But to me, it shows that we are creator beings in physical form, and we can create heaven on earth here, not have to wait to go to it, which we will anyway. But we've got an opportunity that we can steer the ship. And this is where, again, it can sound so crazy, especially to newcomers to the situations and topics that we're talking about, but this affects everyone globally and universally.
Your energy affects everyone. Like, think about the anatomically, we are, an atom at our base level. The atom is largely space. That doesn't make any sense either. But you think about, the vibrational frequency that most people are operating by is governed by external forces. And that this is where the device argument comes in. People are sort of pouring their soul into a device. Most of their intention is going into a device. They can sit there for days instead of being out in nature, just watching a device. Like, that cannot be good for you.
No.
And that's a big problem for humans. This ancient geometry that you see, that you reference there, is prevalent in plant medicine as well.
Yes. Yep.
And I don't know, what are your thoughts on plant medicine? I've had some various experiences with plant medicines. I'd love to know what your take is.
I
Because
think
there's obviously that you can get to the same places with breath work, and you don't need endogenous substances to see that ancient geometry.
yeah.
But I'm keen to know, have you gone down the path of plant medicine?
There's a few things I've tried because there were people abusing it, and I need to know what to do to help. And I've never talked about this before, so I know what it does, and it's how I operate without it. I don't need it, but it's an on switch when I have it. So psychically, I can start getting all that anyway. But I even go beyond what the plant medicine is capable of doing. So, with that said, plant medicine does have its benefit, but there's a shortfall for many that go towards that path, especially if they're not doing it in the correct circumstances, which is like, let's say with ayahuasca, people aren't aware you're meant to have a vegan diet 2 weeks before it and pray to Mother Ayahuasca to get what you need from it before you even attempt it. Most people aren't doing that. They're smoking DMT. I can tell you when I was in a certain city in Australia, I had a lot of people coming to me and they happened to have tried DMT recently in that time period, and they were all describing the same entities. Well, the person that was making it wasn't in a good mood, putting negative energy into it, and all these people were having negative experiences from the beings that this guy had attached to him going out into the DMT. So there is benefits to it, but my thing is to do it naturally because I haven't touched it for years. I touched it a handful of times because my thing was I need to know the mechanics of this if I'm going to help some people. I need to know what this can do, and it's very much similar, as I said, to the way that I operate, but it's limited in what it can do. Now, for people that aren't multidimensional like me, we could say most of the time, it's very beneficial because it gives them an experience of multidimensional mind. But people, like we've got to, play the level field here as well. If it's done in the right conditions, people have got off heroin, cocaine, addictions like that from even just one go at it. So it's like
Ibogaine.
they've surrendered, they've seen their own crap, why they are a crappy person, this, that, the other, and they've got enough insight that they can heal themselves and go on that path. So there's benefits to it. Don't get me wrong, but my thing is I know that we can do this natural because I'm an example of that. And I know many people like myself that like I know that their experiences, I know that they're experiencing the same stuff and they don't need it. But some people, it's like we could say medication. Some people can get by without medication, some people need it. And there is a benefit to it, but my thing is that if it's not done under the right conditions in the right places with the right help, um, it can be more harmful than anywhere near helpful for people if it's just done with the wrong intention even.
Mm. Ancient cultures seem to be all over it, and there seems to be a common thread with a
Definitely.
lot of the, very common thread. Here's the thing though, Pete, like we're given this amazing bit of technology, the human body, yet we haven't been given a proper manual how to drive this vehicle properly. Like it seems to me we are just starting to uncover and understand there's a lot more to us humans than we've been given credit. And that's a really exciting opportunity. That's the new frontier, I think, is trying to optimize the human experience using the vehicle that we really don't understand. The vast majority of people would just say don't understand how to get the best out of their human body.
Well, even the top yogis and teachers as well, like this is the thing that I say to people, and you said the word, and James Gilliland, who's a mentor friend but also master teacher as well, he's trained in many different disciplines, helped thousands of people over the years, and like he says, there's no manual to this. We're figuring out the manual, and the manual for one person is not going to be the manual for the next. And so the thing is if you're aware of that and that you're doing this as you go along, not only can you have compassion for yourself in that, but also others. But it's also time to experiment, whether it is with breath work. Do you get dreams or inner visions? Are you somebody that gets intuition more through knowing and a feeling rather than clairaudience? Because we've all got these senses, but some are more adaptive to different senses than others. And at the same time, as I say to people, as multidimensional as I can be, I can tell you now that we're in a special experience to where whether it's making love, kissing somebody, the sun on our face, the air that we breathe, the smell of a rose, these are things that you cannot experience even on extraterrestrial civilizations and their planetary bodies or satellites like you can here. I can tell you that for a fact. So we've got such blessings in this experience that people go, I want to be in the fifth dimension. It's like, you've already done that. You're here to elevate here to those states. So be the best you here, be an example, but also, give yourself leeway because you're not always going to be perfect, but we're here to experience being human. You can do all that any other time. You're going to leave this and wish that you came back or come back because you didn't do, we could say, to the full way that you could have, being human. So we need to have that balance between driving the human experience, but also enjoy being human. And it's right in our face and people aren't seeing it. Partly if they're sitting behind, a PS5 for bloody 12 hours a day. And look at what that's doing to a lot of relationships. I'm just one that's never really been in the gaming, but whether it's that or just the internet in general, people even think with myself, I'm always watching something, and I might watch something maybe once or twice a day, but people can't understand. I got to get away from this thing. I got to go out and garden or mow lawns or something because I can't sit in front of this all day. There's no way I could do that. So we've got to have that balance.
We've lost touch with that. We have, and I think there's something in. I think our indigenous cultures have seen the white man come and go many times. I think, like we think they're primitive, but maybe the world we're living in, they know, hey, that's not going to last long. You go and do that.
No, they do. Yeah,
you go and do your thing over there. And because, even just an indigenous culture in our backyard here, Peter, like 50,000 year culture, like we talk about our indigenous peoples being the original custodians.
Yeah, of the planet.
Now, I think it's previous custodians, not original. Like 4.8 billion years, the Earth. Like how many incarnations, how many iterations have there been over that timeline? And can we even trust that data? But I just think our time here is so fleeting, and yet a lot of people, I'm not broad brushing, don't question it. It's just, they don't question where we come from, what's before life, what's after life. I don't even question how magical the moment is. It's just living. We just do it. We wake up, we work, we pay bills, we do things, we shit, we sleep. And we just wait to death. We work, and then we retire, and we wait to death. Oh, that's just how it is. That's how it is. I'm like, hang on a sec. Like, if that is all there is, shouldn't you be squeezing the life out of every second that you're here? And yet you have, I personally have just a constant urge. It's like an ache to understand what is happening. Like, what is this? Like it leads me to people like you to try and help me understand, what is this thing what is this we're all in and experiencing together? And there's a beauty in not knowing. I know that. And part of me sometimes says, shut the fuck up, Trent, stop questioning, just enjoy it. And then the other part of me is, no, there's a deep hunger to want to know, to access more of this experience, to experience at a deeper level, a richer level. So yeah, that's where I'm always coming from, Peter. Just trying to understand self first.
That's good. That
and that's a very.
I don't think you can go back either. I know that people can go back to living more of a mainstream life, but privately they're still watching videos on it, reading books on it. Like you can't go backwards. The number one thing is that none of us have the complete picture. And this is where part of what's been orchestrated, specifically in the spiritual community, is divide and conquer to stop us working that out. And my thing is that if people just follow the heart, now this is a very hard thing with this, is that the heart is where people need to go, in my opinion. But with that, it's external validation that needs to sort of wean down. Now, my thing is there's a fine line between that and discernment, because it doesn't mean that anything and everything you're thinking of is going to be correct. So this is the real hard thing, is that we're in a state that we want external validation for this, for that, the other thing, and whatever. It's almost like I say to people, right, you've made a decision on a life choice, and you ring up a friend or family member, and before you even ring them up, you've already made your choice. What you're doing is you're ringing them about this to see if you've got external validation and the go-ahead from them for you about to make this choice. And the thing is, in the choices when you go down this path, not everyone's going to be happy. I can tell you, back in 2010 and onwards for a few years, like everywhere I went, I was now the guy that lost it in Albury Wodonga because I'm on the news talking about extraterrestrials. And everywhere I went, people I could see them in the shopping windows, and it was hard. I lost all friends, even my family at one stage, and I gave people an ultimatum, which was, if I feel like crap every time I see you, I got love for you, but I'm not going to be around you. And years later, it's done a full circle, and it's not about being right. But I went through that knowing, all right, I know what I know, I've experienced what I've experienced, and the compassion and love I learned so much for people without any hate. Because there was a specific experience. I just got back from, I was on the plane coming back from doing Sunrise. And I'm thinking I just went full psychotic on them. Like I didn't go crazy or anything, but my point was I said these are like ghosts, they're multidimensional. And you can see them like thinking this guy's not here. You know, this guy's completely off with the fairies. And I got back on the plane and I thought, all right, yeah, I've got photos, witnesses, this, that, the other. But I sat there going, no wonder, like, if I was them, by all means, I should be psychotic because if this is real, they should have seen it, experienced it, or we could say on the back foot, they should at least be open-minded to it. So what happened was I got very humbled from that experience that ruined my life partially, but it was the hugest blessing from the ridicule because it humbled me to go, hang on, Pete, you're here. You've got to pull it right back because these people aren't there and it's a majority of the population, and they're not there because it's not that they're not worthy or open to it. It's because of their education, upbringing, social engineering, all this, that by them, if this is real, they should know about it. So it brought me back to, right, this is what I'm dealing with, to the point where those who are ready, when they're ready, they'll find my stuff. And that's where I'm at now. But it took a while to get there because that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with education and the media system and university system and medical and everything, that if this is all real, they would know about it. The thing is, there's stuff behind that again, it comes back to something non-human that is so far ahead of knowing plan A, B, C, D, that it's done what it's done in a certain way, but it doesn't mean everything is a conspiracy either. You know, there's people that go down those rabbit holes, and there are conspiracies, but this is beyond a conspiracy, what I'm talking about. And you can't think that everything is a conspiracy as well. There's a very fine line with it all.
Most conspiracy theories are proven in time to be right.
A lot of the
Let's
time,
be honest.
yeah,
Most.
yeah. And we've found that out in the last few years, especially.
You got to, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, is the old saying. How do you hold your nerve? And I'm baffled by human ignorance and ego. Like, we think we're alone in the universe. We're all created in the image of God. Like religion, I do a lot of traveling and travel the world a lot. And every town, every city, there's temples of worship. Now, I turned a light bulb on for me maybe 12 months ago when I haven't been anti-religion, but I've always questioned it. I found it very manipulative. There's some billions and billions of people throughout history have gone to temples of worship. There's something in that, and it's global. And so there's something in that higher dimension, the higher connection to source, that is very real.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that the subtleness of it is very subtle. Like that, I love that Elon Musk reference. If aliens are here, they're very subtle. He would know. Mm-hmm. They are subtle, yes. I want to talk about UFOs, UAP, UFO as well, Peter. We can't get off this podcast without talking about UAPs and UFOs. But yeah, there's a real arrogance to the closed-mindedness that humans have when it comes to this sort of topic. Like, you know, and I think about, there's so much evidence now from paranormal, so much information that you can access now online that's just overwhelming in terms of different inexplicable experiences that we just can't really explain with our basic human mind. But But I think there is a groundswell. People are starting, there seems to be a shift in, I wouldn't say consciousness, but people's openness to exploring these topics.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is thanks to the proliferation of just the mass explosion of information. People are now getting access to, so many different pockets of knowledge in all different topics. It's opening our minds up now to explore these topics more, I think. It certainly has helped me on my journey, just being able to access different people and sharing their different experiences and pulling together, what seems to be sort of a consistent themes across things. So full disclosure, like that the stuff that we've heard and read about and listened to podcasts talk about, things from, area
51 in that, yeah.
what is it? Area 51. And, it's sort of like, well, moon landings being, you start to sort of listen to enough people and try and understand for yourself what's resonating with me, what feels like truth. It can be very confusing, sort of pulling through all this different information, trying to understand things. But what's your take on the UFO, UAP phenomenon? And, what's your read on it all? Like, what do you think? Aliens are a real thing. They have to be, but why is it so subtle, and why is it still sort of very vague?
Because you're dealing with non-human intelligence behind it that does partly a faction that doesn't want this out, and you're dealing with another faction that want to do within universal law that this is exposed. This also comes down to when you said what's an orb at the start of it. This is the variation of intelligences behind the UAP UFO situation. You've got humans doing it. You've got future and past humans doing it. You've got nature spirits, elementals, Bigfoot, angels, ETs, and ultra-terrestrials involved with this. That's why when you see a light or this, that, the other, it's not one thing or the other. It could be that. And what I'd say is us and everything I just mentioned would be the bottom 5%. The angels would be up here. And what's in between is another 90% of things that I'm still trying to understand. That is the complexity of this. And because of that, we are in a situation where we have built a prison that we can't see within our own minds through external conditionings that we are not even aware of, but there is a gap opening in the bars in that. And that is through the education and people at least coming out and talking about this, that we're so lucky now that this has been talked about for so long that now people are taking this more and more serious. So even with me, you've seen the podcast and that. The stuff I don't usually talk about a lot of the time is how I have been taken off world, where an orb opened up in front of me and teleported me to 3 locations in 3 star systems. I've been on board crafts. I've done all like these types of things. And what I can tell you is a lot of the time I don't talk about it, though I've written about it, because to understand it, there's a lot that needs to go into understanding how somebody that is like me works. And what I'll tell you is, and this goes to you as well, you may not understand this at the moment, but you're probably going to look back and realize that you're psychic and you never knew that you were psychic. And I don't like the term psychic, but what I can tell you is most people that are having any forms of experiences, even if it's so minimal, whether it's with premonitions, knowing who's on the phone before they call, synchronicities, number synchronicities, you're studying this and all of a sudden all this stuff comes to you. Even entrepreneurs, people don't even know Tony Robbins was at SRI for a short period, Stanford Research Institute, where the remote viewing and everything was being done. And Colonel John Alexander came forward on Sean Ryan about that, speaking about this. And the thing is that the truth is stranger than even UFOs, but the UFOs are a conduit to that being revealed.
Wow. Okay. So there's a natural process here. There's a design process here.
Well, you could say that. You could even look at this like an immune system that's sick at the moment, that's resorting itself out. I've got to use analogies because the complexities of this I cannot even put in a linear format to convey to you. It's that convoluted. But I think
Well, we're using our tiny little human minds.
Yeah. But I think it's a knowingness. Like people when they hear me, they get more of a knowingness of what I'm saying rather than getting what I'm saying. They've got a feeling of knowingness to what I'm saying. not so much an audible thing and a
Yes, yes.
processing thing, because I think you all know, like my thing is you already know all this. I'm just a reminder. And it can't be that I'm right about everything, but what I'll tell you is that all this is the truth wrapped in a lie. 90+% of anything you can research on this topic, any book, anything you watch, and this is where I say don't look at all my stuff as if it's 100% correct. But what I can tell you is what I know from experience, and I even got told by one being specifically, is that we're going down the path where it's going to be the truth wrapped in a lie. And it will eventually reveal itself. But there's just too much crap around it, and it's because people don't understand negative influences and negative intelligences that they don't understand this, because this is how it's meant to be manipulated, that just because you're told this or you experience this, you think this is what it is. That's the lie. The truth is that something's going on, but the lie is what's, it's wrapped in. And because of that, I'm very discerning and sometimes sit on stuff. I didn't talk about going off world for 10 years because there's so much I wanted to go through before I went through that with people, because the who thinks that an orb can pick you up and teleport you off? Well, we're not talking about a space vehicle or a vehicle or a machine that's created by another human. This is beyond all that. And the funny thing is, when we look at this, is that you've got in India them talking about gods and goddesses. In Egypt, they're talking about gods and goddesses. You go to the Native Americans, they're talking about that they're seeded from off-worlders, just like the Aboriginals saying that they were seeded by the Pleiadians, and the Japanese talk about the Pleiadians. The Indians talk about the Dogon. The Dogon people talk about beings from Sirius. We go throughout, the Judeo and Christian cultures. They're talking about beings of light and angelic intelligences, and you've got some of the same angels and beings in that, and they're in the Quran. And we're all fighting over who's right. And I think if we go back to love, that is the first testament of anything. That's what it is. It's beyond what's been written. It's love. Love creates. That's what we come from. That's how we were created, was from love. Not just can that be a physical thing, but spiritually we were created from love. And I think if we get through the barriers that divide us, that love can be found and we can reshape and transform this. But the thing is, I don't think, including myself, anyone's got the answer of how that is to be done. And I think that's most likely going to be a natural process in the immune system I'm speaking about, that this recorrects itself.
Is God a mathematician or a musician?
Anything that you can think of comes from that one consciousness that's interfacing with itself.
Wow.
Good, bad,
Well,
in between. Like, I mean, everything. Like, I even see it now that the negative doing what they're doing is orchestrated, you could say, to an aspect of God, like the yin yang, to get the response, and we could say the results it's wanting through a process of evolution. It's that convoluted. It doesn't mean I endorse, the child trafficking and all this and that. I don't endorse it, but what I'm saying is, when you're where I'm at and you look back on this, you start to see that everything's got a purpose to it.
Well, that's a thing of, to find the light, you have to be in the dark. Like, you have to, I think from my perspective, a lot of my people have a depth to them, usually through trauma or struggle or challenges. And so they're finding that deeper connection to themselves through challenges or through going through painful experiences. It seems to open people up. In my own journey, I can relate to that. My darkest hours are usually when I've been able to find something that has been, a true gift, something that's, a different level of awareness. There's an awake to the awakening process.
That's a common thing. And the thing that I've mentioned when this is being brought up is we've got to be able to find that without going through trauma. But there is blessings in burdens. There's always blessings in burdens. And again, it doesn't mean that what you've gone through traumatically is okay, but I'm sure there's some blessings in strength and soul evolution that happen in that state that you may have not found in other ways. That's why I say there's blessings in burdens. But there is the odd occasion that I find people that are like us and they've never had anything negative in their life. And sometimes they don't see what we see, but they're very spiritual, this, that, the other. And then others, they actually see the blessing that they've been given to not go through everything in the money troubles and, deaths and this, that, the other. But they're so grateful that gratefulness is something equivalent to what you would have for being grateful for what you've got going through that. So it's almost like the cup half full scenario. Some people just have a cup half full no matter what, and some people have it half empty, and some people can go from the perspective of being half empty to half full. This is the thing that we're going through, which is a rewiring of our own brains. I think that's going to be part of this, because we actually see with our brain, not with our eyes. But what we perceive is with the heart, because that's tapping into the 0 point. I'll give you an example, right? And I'll get everyone to join in with me. This is only going to take 20 seconds, if that. Just close your eyes for a moment, and you can hear my voice. So you're observing my voice, but there's a place behind that where you're witnessing that you're observing my voice. That is the space where all minds are connected. Open your eyes now, it's fine. But if you can understand, even with deep meditation, that's where they're sitting in that space of awareness. They're aware that they're aware. If you can sit in that space, that is where the minds of the universe equal one.
Mm.
We're not educated on this, and that's part of the process.
Yes.
But that's where all can be found. And I think when you hit that spot, from experience for me anyway, the questions that you once have subside, because there's no need for it anymore, because everything is in that space. We create from that space. Even our resolutions to situations and what have you can be found in that space. It's just being aware that that space even exists, which we're bombarded in the five sense reality, I believe, partly to forget that space with the way things have been orchestrated. Unless you go back to the ancient tribes that they know about that space, and they have a balance of community and family and what their work is, and spirituality, somewhat of sitting in that space and communing with God in that space. What are we doing to do that? And that's the thing, it just comes down to balance.
Meditation is tuning in. Like, for me, that's probably the go-to practice for me. And it's not easy. I don't find meditation easy, but it's trying to upgrade the software, so to speak. You have to go into that space, into the quantum, into the thought realm. But I think that's where, we're tuning in. We're tuning into something. I don't know what that is. I'm sure you have ideas, but don't really know what that thing is. But we're tuning into the information field, and the quietening of the mind. The mind's just out of control for a lot of people. Everybody's got ADHD, or they're diagnosed with something these days, Peter. But it's how do you use that as a superpower and really start to tune the mind to help you raise your frequency? I think that's these things like intuition, having, psychic. Everybody, you're saying, has a psychic ability. Tuning into it, evolving it, must be like a muscle. So how do you trust it?
It is. Well, that's where you're not going to get the evidence till after the fact. And that's the trick. Or talking to the top remote viewers and psychics, we all agree on that what happens is, after you realize that you're right in a practice, you sort of time travel back in your mind and go, how did the information come through when I was right? How did it come through when I was wrong? And you'll notice that when you're right, it just comes in. It's just automatic. When you're wrong is usually when you're second guessing. Usually I say, I've got a 10-second rule. After 10 seconds, you'll start to make the information up. If I'm working with another psychic, I don't give them 1 second to answer me, and they understand why. But there is a free meditation on the website and on YouTube called Connect to Your Spirit and ET Guides. And a lot of psychics and people that are doing this love to use that as a practice, to where you can start to do it within 1 minute once you know the technique. Now, it's not a selling point, though. You can buy it, but it's free on YouTube and it's on Spotify. And that is a technique where I get you to project a thought or have a thought, what thoughts, feelings, visions come back. Again, within that 10 seconds, project another thought, what thoughts, feelings, visions come back, because that's how I interface with angelic and extraterrestrial intelligences. Now, there was a time that, I've done prophecies, predictions, this, that, the other. There's no use in that. My reason for doing that was to ruin my reputation if they were wrong, that I was useless. That was my meaning of doing anything like that. But the future is fluid, and it's what we make it. There is probabilities and outcomes. But I think when we look at this, it's finding out that the thing you're looking for the entire time with what you just mentioned about these gifts and how we operate is basically this: the biggest gift in the universe is you being you. Your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom, your expertise, nobody has in the same way as you. Now, there may be, you could put two people together that have experienced almost identical, but the lens that they've experienced their reality through gives them totally different tools than the next man, that some people need to hear what you've got to say, not from this other person, but some people need to hear from this other person and not you. It's so important that we need to know right now that every single person watching this and hearing this, that we need you right now being you. That is the gift in physical form. But in that, it is finding a balance within your existence. It's a balance between social life, you time, time with God, time having fun, time doing hobbies. But most of all, that intuitive insight and that spiritual insight comes in with the most simplistic things like doing dishes, going for a walk, stuff that gets you in what I call the zone. Like when you're at school and you're daydreaming looking out the window, or when you're driving a car and you go, where's the last hour gone? I've just daydreamed. That place I call the zone. That place is like no mind's hitting God's mind in a state of meditative that you're doing what I call active meditation. Now, I'm getting to a point with this. There's a gentleman that came here one day and he said, I can't meditate anymore. And he'd been working with different master teachers and doing this a long time. And I'm just about to hit 42 now. And I said to him, you're not meant to meditate anymore. And he goes, what? I said, mate, all those years meditating was about you being meditative when you're driving the car, when you're walking, when you're doing the dishes, when you're talking to people. It's about making your life a meditation. So we've got a scenario that what I would advise people to even think about, I'll tell you this now, it's not a selling point or anything or even an endorsement, though I recommend it. There's these, what we call Vipassana retreats all over the world. We've got them in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And you can
Yes,
just donate.
I've done it.
You've done it, right? That 10 days I said
Yep.
to people, now for years before I even did it, I would meditate 8 to 12 hours a day, either doing meditation or remote viewing. So when I went in there, it was like a playground straight away. But what was great was less distractions from the outside world. And most people can't go 3 days with their own internal dialogue. And then you start to realize that your vibration. If you can experience something like that and carry it with you in your own form, and I think it's a stepping stone. As I say, it's not the way. I levitated twice when I did it. The teacher's like, you're losing your karma. I'm like, I don't know if I'm losing my karma, but I don't understand how I had an electrical shock go from my spine and I'm looking down at the ground from being lifted up. It was quite an experience and actually freaked me out at the time because it happened straight after, like it happened, and then like 15 minutes later it happened again. It never happened again, but that was a few days into it. But I understood the vibration because when I've had multidimensional experiences, you realize that now you are vibration, but people hear it, but they don't understand it unless they experience it. And this is the thing. There's a difference between meditating for 5 minutes every few weeks or every day or whatever to I'm going to go hard and just try this out. Now, you don't want to burn yourself out, but what I say is at least doing something like that once in a blue moon can give you first-hand experience beyond what you think you are. And also a healing opportunity to heal stuff that you may not even be aware of, or also be grateful for what's in your life, because a lot of people realize these things when they're in a setting that they're away from loved ones. There's no talking, there's no eye contact, there's no nothing. And for me, doing that for years before even looking at Vipassana, which made it more of a breeze, I was lucky to be in that situation, but it's because I put myself in isolation because of the ridicule the public was giving me that I got it to be a form of fuel to make a situation of benefit rather than going to a state of depression and down. And there was blessings in it.
That I must say, the Vipassana I found very challenging.
Oh, it's hard
And
for a lot
I
of
just
people.
have to be completely honest. I left on day 3. I did it many, many years ago before I had kids. And I would love to go back and do it. But I literally climbed the barbed wire fence on day 3 to get out. I was that agitated by 3 days of meditating. It was very, I just
and that's not having
had
a
to get
go
out.
at anyone, but this is a common thing that I
No.
noticed that by day 3, because what happens, right, is like, as I say to people, if you can make it past that, you will start to realize the vibration. But by that point, what happens is all the mental gymnastics and all the stuff going on, people need to be able to sit in it. And when you sit in it and you can observe it and realize, Muji, the great spiritual teacher, says this: thoughts are like clouds, they come, they go, they dissolve, be the sky. Now, it's easy as said, but when you can actually do something like that in a setting like that, you can cut cords and release stuff that is sitting in you that you've got no idea that's sitting there. Now, some people just can't do it, or they're not there. I believe anyone can do it, and that's okay as well. But my thing is, when you realize that you're vibration and that you are not the body, and in settings when you're sitting there for hours on end, that gives people an experience, because that same space is the space that extraterrestrials are trying to chase as well. They're on their own ascension process. But my thing with this is that, and I've been saying this for years and others in their own way, everything is consciousness and awareness. But my saying is everything is consciousness and awareness that goes into a vibratorial state. That vibrational state creates sound, which that is going into a state of light. Light creates matter, and they're all interchangeable. When you are quiet and there's no talking or eye contact and you can sit in that space, you start to realize that your vibration, like you actually feel every molecule of your body is vibrating. When you experience that, that now takes you from theorizing or hearing about it to now experiencing it, which means you're on a whole new level. It doesn't mean that you're better than anyone else, but what happens is you go, all right, is this what I am? And not only do you realize that's partly what you are, but what creates that vibration is actually what you are. And once you understand that, now you can create this reality. But unless you can shut up in your own mind and just let that stuff work itself out and realize that most of it doesn't even matter, that's where it's hard to come to that conclusion. That's where it's not saying, believe me. But I was, again, lucky that I've done years of this before I even tried that, where it was the same at that place. Like one of the places I went, you come out third day, and by the end of the third day, you've only got like, I think, a third of the people left. And then by the end of it, you've got half of that left because they can't go. And apparently Vipassana used to be done for months on end. Then it went to 40 days.
Oh,
like,
holy shit.
And then it went down to 10. So, it's just something that I'm saying it's not the only way, but being able to meditate regularly and hit that space of awareness that you're aware, you can start to work with that field and bring that field of consciousness here to your human experience. That's where you can start to control this, but everything's just intention.
There's dark retreats are all the rage at the moment, Peter.
Yeah,
going into the dark retreat.
Everything I do is blindfolded and earplugged. I've been doing it that way for years. Yeah. But all it is it's depriving the senses so other senses open up. That's why I did it.
Yeah.
So I, even from a kid, would even do sometimes martial arts blindfolded. So funny enough, I implemented being blindfolded into a lot of practices. Yeah.
That makes sense. Let's talk about manifestation.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very interested in this realm. And you listen to the Dispensers and the various modern gurus, and then the ancients. What's your take on how to everyone wants to live the life of their dreams. Mm-hmm. That's usually a common thread between humans. They want to live life. They have desires, ambitions, goals, dreams. So what's the key to manifestation? And is there a link here with frequency and, there's some of the areas that we've been digging into?
There is. And there's a number of different things that I've seen a lot of different ways. Now, I think it comes back to the number one thing I said before, which is you don't give up. You know that yourself with work and everything you've done to achieve what you've done. You didn't give up. With that said, when you do look at things like going into the unknown, like Joe Dispenza says, I was saying it before, people usually can't go to that next level because there's fear of the unknown. What happens if I make this choice? But that chaos decides where you go from that, what frequency you hit. Do you hit a frequency where with that which you're putting out for you've now manifested? So I think the thing is, for a lot of people, I say, look, write down a list of short-term things you'd like to achieve and long-term things. Because the thing is, most people procrastinate or it sits in their head. Now, you could even, from that, do a vision board, which for some is very brand new. For some people are going to be like, oh, that's old news. Now, what I'm saying here is going to be a number of things, because the fact of the matter is I've got to meet everyone watching this where they're at, and everyone is at different places. A vision board is something where imagine your dream life and you print it out or cut it out of magazines and you stick it on a board and put it next to your bed, and you visualize that life every morning and every night when you're waking up or before you're going to bed. That is not going to be manifest, but it has manifested. That even closing your eyes and turning around, even though your eyes aren't open, you see the bedroom of your dreams, that you're in the house of your dreams, whatever. But the most important thing, I think, with anything is whatever you're doing, you need to attach an emotion to. But this is the key. Now, for me, what I can tell you is if I talk to people in whatever setting I am talking to them in, my thing is, all right, forget about money, forget about friends and family just for a moment. If you could be doing anything on the planet, and again, resources don't mean jack in this setting. If you could be doing anything in the world right now and be living your dream life, what would you be doing? They say whatever, and I'm like, all right, what can you do right now to get the ball rolling on doing that? Because what you will find is there's always, in my experience, there's a form of service to others involved with it, and it's not actually work. And if they're passionate about it, which they are, they can do that, and the abundance, what I call cosmic abundance, arrives very quickly. Now, when I talk about cosmic abundance, it's not the money. If you're doing something for money, you've got to forget about it. It's like this, right? Be lucky to do one appointment a day. Yeah, I do events, this, that, the other, but everything that's come about here was so I can leave a legacy and leave a place in Australia when I'm gone that people have got that I didn't have, that I needed when I was having my experiences starting out. That's what drives me, is to be of service and have that place, educate people. And it's not about the money, but what happens is the mortgage and everything gets done because I'm doing what I'm passionate about. That frequency now taps you into the unknown, and I'm constantly in the unknown. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not in anxiety about it. I'm in excitement going, what's God going to do today? But here's the clencher. The first thing I do every single morning and at the end of every day is I talk to God how it can be a vehicle to work through me and assist others, and I accept the blessings and abundance that comes with it so I can keep doing whatever it is. But you've got to be very careful if you do that, because as I say to people, I can get a call any moment and I've got to go overseas, and it's like, oh, I don't want to have to get on a plane and do this, that, the other. And God's like, well, you said you wanted to be my hands and feet. So you've got to, if you are honest in your heart about what you're doing, you've got to be prepared if you take that next level, because you're going to go into situations you have never dreamed of. But not only that, you'll experience the beauty and wonderment of this realm in ways that you can't even fathom until after the fact. So it's a number of different things from my perspective that I look at in terms of manifesting. And I'll just say to each person with where they're at to take that for what it's worth and how you can incorporate that.
That's a big part of that, Peter, is I'm just thinking about people wanting to follow their passion or answer a calling. There's a lot of people that are, they're toiling, they're following a career they maybe don't enjoy, don't love, it doesn't light them up, they're not vibrating at their highest level, they feel like there's something that they're meant to be doing. They don't have the courage, they don't have the support system around them, perhaps, or the confidence or the belief in themselves. They really want to be doing something to make a positive impact, yet, they don't have the confidence, or they don't know whether to trust the voice. Do I want to leave a really high-paying job to do something really positive for the world? Because that's what I feel like I'm called to do. But how do I know if it's a voice I should trust?
What they're doing is they're creating every excuse not to follow through when they're doing that. Now, I said it before. When you follow the heart, it's like how many times, and everyone watching this, I don't care who's watching it, they've had this happen. How many times have you had to do something, no matter what? It could have been a phone call, an email, help someone out, you don't know what it is, and then later on, you find out if you hadn't have done that, it was a life-saving situation, this could have occurred. You don't even know that at the time, but you have to do something, and you don't know why you got to do it. That's the heart, that spirit, working and speaking through you. You don't know why, and it's not hurting anyone. Now, if there's excitement in that way, if you can meditate and look at it, I would say that's the heart speaking to you. It's when it's anxiety, it's when it's pulling you down, and it's like it won't stop bugging you, but it doesn't feel right. There's a difference, because as you elevate, there will be negative influences also masquerade as spirit guides, as the light, this, that, the other. But the feeling is what's completely different, and the fruit. So my thing, even with this conversation, and if you made those life choices, what is the fruit that you could see coming from it? Now, this is the litmus test in everything, I can tell you, right? Because people go, how do you know what you're communicating with is being honest, it's not manipulative, it's not demonic? 100% good question. I can tell you now, it's the fruit from the information and the experience, and the fruit from the byproduct of your actions. So, all right, you've got this high-paying job. Great. This,
Is
that,
your
the
fruit
other.
feeding others?
Yeah. So you've got this high-paying job. It's great. You're miserable. Your love life's gone to crap because you don't see your missus. Your kids hate you. This, that. You could go on with this. If I make this choice, can I do with less money? In a way, you might end up making more money because you're doing what you're passionate about. Can I get more time with my loved ones? Can I be employing and bringing people in for a good cause? And this is a big thing as well, is what you are doing in terms of service to others and for your living. Is it actually uplifting your community and the world? Or is it contributing to the system and the cycle that we have been controlled by for a long time? Now, the thing is, I don't swear or on podcasts or anything, but my thing is, you've got to come to a point of the effort moment. It's like, effort. What's the worst that can happen if I make this choice? What, I've got to start again? I'll go back to the job that I had. Like you've got to be able to analyze things that, yeah, you can't jump from this to this. That's why I say, if you've got a normal job, start the website, spend 15 minutes to an hour a day on whatever your dream job is, why you've got this job. And if you are really passionate about it, you at some point will be able to slip straight into it, and you will have the clients, you'll have this, you'll have that. Don't be stupid and just go, I'm dropping this today and doing that. You've got to come at this in a logical sense. Like you said, we've got bills to pay, we're in a real world, but if you can look at what is the fruit of my thought and what is the potential, you know, this again is an entrepreneur trend. I know the top people with crypto and with movies and this, that, the other, they've all at some times not only gone all out and had nothing left in the bank, but they've at times lost it all. But that was a lesson. It wasn't a mistake. It was a lesson, and it was fruit in terms of knowledge and wisdom that served them down the track to when they kick butt even more. But the thing is how does it give back? How does it give back? That to me, because I advise a lot of people in these areas as well that are already well off, and you could say physically doing better than me in all these different ways, but the spiritual aspect they've been losing. And when they bring that in, they now have a whole new thing and a way of giving. And I'll tell you something interesting, and I won't point out who it is, but I met this gentleman, and I even to this day, I've never been hugged so much. And this guy is one of the only guys in Australia that owns a beach and all the houses on it. I didn't even know at the time, and because it doesn't matter to me, but he was very successful, and we got talking. And he goes, Pete, you're going to be big one day. And I was like, to me, I'm not even worried about any of that. But he goes, you know how I've got where I am? And I said, how? Because I'm intrigued. This guy's so successful. How did he get where he is? He goes, I'm trying to work out how to keep giving everything away. He goes, I give away 10 grand. 10 grand's just back in the bank. And he goes, the key to success is giving. And I mean, this guy is extremely well off. But do you know what's on top of that? Him and a billionaire that I know are the only two super successful people I've ever met that are genuinely and spiritually really happy. A lot of other billionaires and successful people, they are miserable. And he was one of the two that I can tell you without a doubt, his family life, his kids, the friends around him, because I met all of them. It was just like one of the most spiritual dudes I've ever met. And he's up at he said, I'm up at 5 a.m. doing my affirmations, but he said, above it all, Pete, he said, I'm trying to work out how I can give away what I've got to help others, not to hand it out, but to like, give them a hand up.
Yeah.
That left me going, how can you, even if you haven't got the money, how can you give? And it's not giving to a way that's going to deplete your own energy. I would say it's more of a way of allowing spirit to work through you to direct what's meant to be helped at this time that's going to be beneficial for whoever you're actually helping. Because there's some people you can help right now that it's not going to elevate them. But there's other people you can help right now that it's going to boost them to exactly where they need to go. Because sometimes people just need that hand up, not a hand out, but a hand up to pull them. And they can take it from there. Some people can't, and that's usually because they're not doing in terms of what can they do to help others. Really, they lose that amongst it. We see this with a lot of very wealthy people. They eventually lose it, and usually, if you know some things behind the scenes, they lost that service to others. They lost why they started what they started.
Common trap. It really is a common trap. You won't swear on the podcast, so I'm going to swear for you, Peter. Hallelujah. Because it's the fruit. We're all creating fruit. I love the Mark Twain quote, the famous Mark Twain quote, get out on a limb, that's where the fruit is. But that links into a couple of things that I wanted to dig into.
Yeah.
Which is abundance mentality, having an abundance mindset. And there seems to be two sort of frequency hacks. One is bold authenticity, like being 100% yourself, being your authentic, like resonating at your highest frequency. And authenticity, and also gratitude.
Yes.
So that seems to be like the practice of gratitude and being genuinely grateful. Practicing that daily elevates, raises frequency.
That's one of
and
the
then
things
what you're
for
talking
sure.
about with the successful people giving is they haven't, a lot of people come from scarcity. Take, extract, hang on, hold on tight. Whereas what you're sharing there is just the more that person gives, the more they get back. That's very hard for a lot of people to get their head around because it's like instantly they're conditioned with scarcity.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but if I give away, I'll have nothing. I can't give that away. Whereas what we're talking about is next level abundance.
Well, I think firstly, acknowledging that you're even thinking like that is you're 80% of the way of rectifying that. This is where it gets convoluted too, is sometimes it's not the person that's at the core of that thinking. It's the epigenetics of, let's say, a grandparent that during the Great Depression, they learned to store everything because everything ran out. So what's happening is they're acting like this now, not realizing why they're acting like it, and it's not even them, it's epigenetically. Now, there is ways that you can get around that by talking to yourself on a cellular level, meditating with it, clearing it, cleansing it, this, that, the other. But the other thing is as well is that acknowledging where you are thinking in that way to start off with. This is the very simplistic thing, because what can happen is if you acknowledge it, now you've got a choice to change that because you're conscious of your thoughts. I said this at the start. If you're conscious of your thoughts, you can now change the thoughts. So what happens is even if you change the thought to something productive, now it might be something like, I can't do this because I don't have the money. Now the thing is, you even thinking that's putting that into being in the cellular memory and even in your cells. So my thing would be sometimes I go, why not? Because what happens is if you start thinking like that, you start to compound that and bring those experiences in. Now I'm not saying go and buy a new car if you can't afford it at this time, and you don't want to say can't. This is where it's very core with the words that you're using. People go, I am manifesting. It's no, not even I am. I have whatever it is that you're putting out for the words. Now, the guy that runs Mind Valley, I forget his name at the moment, but I saw a cool hack. It's even on a YouTube ad that he says it. But it's like, let's just say people want to be a millionaire. Instead of going, I'm a millionaire.
Naval?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, Naval. Now even I am a millionaire is okay, but he's even saying stuff like, and don't quote me, but it's like, why am I a millionaire? He's putting out that he's already got it and questioning why he's already this way. And what's happening is that is a form of hack. The thing is,
love it.
is it's all mental gymnastics in how you can play with this. But the thing is, to each person watching this, this is going to meet them where they're at on their own level. So even if it's a very minimal step or a minimal thing, you would know yourself if you jump into a conversation like you have now and you try to do it years ago when you weren't ready, this is going to go above your head. Not to belittle you, but even now, most people that are in this community for 30 years don't understand what I'm saying because I'm just, I could sound like I'm just off with the fairies, and I understand that to an extent. But yeah, people are just where they're at. But the thing is I would say balance and routine of what it is that you're bringing in, because the thing with all this is choices. And Tony Robbins does a really great job with this. It's as simple as this. You can either stay where you are right now if you don't have a game plan, and life will change. It will be that the wheel turns in a normal way. But as I say to my mum, yeah, the wheel turns, but sometimes you've got to turn that wheel. And to turn that wheel, you've got to make a choice. You either stay where you are, or you can make a choice. And the worst thing that can happen is that choice doesn't work out, but it's not the end of it. But this is the difference between somebody that's
So true.
a being in this experience or a creator being in this experience. You can either be or you can be a creator. There's two differences in that, and it's up to the person to decide that.
Well, you're right. This conversation's a bit above my pay grade, to be honest, but I love it, and I'm digging into this. I'm just starting my journey here, Peter. So it's a different type of conversation. I probably wasn't equipped a few years ago to have it. Wasn't as open. But yeah, I'm just intrigued by this. Yeah, everything we've discussed, totally intriguing. And I know we're just scratching the surface. I think it'd be good to talk about the Jaya Sanctuary.
Yeah.
And other things that you've got cooking, so people can, if they want to learn more, they can get access.
Yeah. So there's petermaxwellslattery.com, and there's also jayasanctuary.com, and there's another one called esetiaustralia.org. They're all sort of copies of each other, the websites. But what I'm doing these days is more teaching and education after the years of training, as I said, in yoga and meditation and psychic work and a lot of different things. So I'm between Ratherglen and Corowa in northeast Victoria, and I've got some acreage here where I've got a sanctuary called Jaya Sanctuary. Now, Jaya, it actually means a balance of masculine and feminine. And it also means self-mastery and victory in Sanskrit. And I want everyone to have that in their life, a balance of masculine and feminine, to have self-mastery but be victorious in their life, which is why I called it Jaya Sanctuary. And here I do like initiating contact workshops, remote viewing workshops, sky watches, so people can come here and see the phenomena for themselves during the day, at night. It's happening all the time, anywhere in the world that I go. I think it's happening anywhere, not because of me. I think it's actually everywhere. But some places, when you work on the energies and you're holding the space energetically, the veils become a lot thinner. There's other reasons for that, as well as having gold mining and quartz mining rights, which I don't do. But the land's full of gold and quartz, and it's got underground water from the Murray River running through it. That creates a piezoelectric effect. It's basically we're on a battery here. So yeah, I do a lot from here. There's stuff on the website people can check out. There's movies, there's YouTube stuff. I've done 13 books that people can check out, or the meditations. There's a whole lot of stuff out there. So that's in a thumbnail sketch what I'm doing here, Trent.
Wow, Lee. Prolific. 13 books, you put me to shame. I've got book number 3 coming. I've got to get cracking, but love what you do, Peter, and I cannot thank you enough for making the time to speak with me, and I cannot wait to meet in person, and
yeah,
I'm very keen to come and experience the Jaya Sanctuary as well.
Come and see it for yourself, mate. Welcome anytime.
Mate, would love to. Very mind-bending, this conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and and can't wait to learn more.
All good, mate. Thank you for having me on.
Well, that is... yeah, wow. I'm going to have to go back and review that properly. But